Night fell with its darkness, inviting curiosity and tension. In a small village on the outskirts of town, two terrifying legends circulated among the trembling residents. One legend revolved around a woman named Rini, who disappeared in the forest, while the other was the story of a restless spirit of a young man trapped in a lake. On a quiet night, I, along with my friends David and Mia, decided to listen to and share stories, unaware that the night would bring us closer to the true darkness. The eerie night and mysterious atmosphere would change the way we viewed the legends we had once dismissed. That night, a hunger for adventure led me, David and Mia to gather on the back porch of my house. The sound of crickets filled the silence that enveloped the night. "Anyone want to tell a story?" I asked. Mia, in a teasing tone, said, "You know about Rini, the vanishing woman, right? My dad always tells stories about her." David widened his eyes. "Come with me. Let's hear the story in the forest," he said. "It'll be more exciting." We prepared, bringing flashlights and snacks. The forest was not far from the village, but it always felt eerie at night. At the start of the journey, we joked around, but as we went deeper, the atmosphere changed. "If you hear the whistling wind and a woman's voice calling," David whispered, "that's Rini. She's looking for a companion to take with her." "Stop joking!" Mia tried to appear brave, but her voice trembled. "I'm serious, Mia. She disappeared without a trace in this forest. People say, if you hear her, you better run as fast as you can," I added, feeling the tension beginning to envelop us. From a distance, a faint moaning sound seemed to approach, silencing us. We tried to calm ourselves, but the fear was undeniable. We continued walking, now more cautious. The atmosphere grew even more chilling when we reached a clearing in the middle of the forest. "This is the place," David whispered, "where Rini was last seen." Mia shivered. "We should go back," she said, but we had already come too far. "What if we talk about the young man who drowned in the lake?" I suggested, trying to divert our attention. "He's also said to haunt people who pass by." "It could be one of us," David added with a mischievous smile, but his smile quickly faded when we heard the sound of water rippling near the lake. "Listen," I exclaimed. We approached and saw a faint white figure on the water's surface. A soft voice echoed, "Help, I'm trapped." "Is that?" Mia's voice trembled. "No way, we have to go now." David grabbed our hands, but it felt as if a force was calling us to move forward. We froze, as if hypnotized by the voice. "He can't be stuck there," David muttered. "We have to help him." "Maybe it's just an illusion," I said. But as I tried to step back, the ground beneath us suddenly shook. "Rini!" Mia screamed, now panicking. "We have to go." We no longer cared about myths and legends. Fear took over, and we ran as fast as we could, leaving the voice that continued to call out behind us. On the way back, we didn't speak. The events of that night haunted our minds. When we got home, we gathered in the living room, trying to calm ourselves. "Do you guys believe it now?" I asked, panting. "From now on, I won't underestimate legends," Mia said weakly. "It might be true." Days passed, but the memory of that night remained vivid in our minds. We didn't talk about it, but we felt the same way. We secretly shared stories about what we had experienced. One night, as we gathered at Mia's house, David said, "What if we go back there and clarify everything?" Mia and I exchanged glances. "We've been brave before. There's no harm in trying," I replied, feeling a sense of determination. Finally, that night arrived again. We were more prepared, carrying herbal remedies and protective charms. The forest looked even creepier than before. But this time, we weren't alone. We were brave. When we reached the lake, a strange calmness enveloped us. The faint sound echoed again, but this time we sang, "We're not afraid, we're here to listen." Suddenly, a figure appeared, not to frighten us, but as if to give us strength. The next day, the village was filled with stories of our bravery. "We're tied to this story," David said. "It's not just about fear, but how we built our courage." Mia laughed. "Now we have our own story to tell." I looked toward the forest. Perhaps the legends weren't as bad as we thought. There were lessons to be learned from them. From that moment on, every night we gathered not out of fear, but to celebrate our strength in facing our fears and preserving the legacy that shaped us. One night, when the full moon shone brightly in the sky, I and my 3 best friends, Rina, Andi, and Joko, decided to do something crazy. Explore the infamous haunted house in our village. The house had been abandoned for a long time, and terrifying stories about it were always the talk of the villagers. Some said it was inhabited by ghosts, while others claimed that strange noises could often be heard from inside when night fell. Although I was actually hesitant, curiosity and a sense of adventure eventually overcame my fear. Little did we know, that night would become the most terrifying experience of our lives. The old house was located at the end of the road, surrounded by large trees that almost blocked the moonlight. The atmosphere around it was already enough to make our hair stand on end. "Come on, let's try to get in before morning," said Rina enthusiastically. She was always the bravest among us. Andi, who usually liked to joke, just laughed and said, "If there's a ghost, we'll run." We all laughed, but deep down, our hearts were pounding. With flashlights in hand, we approached the old, rotting wooden door. As we opened it, the door let out a long creaking sound, as if warning us not to enter. The moment we stepped inside, a cold breeze engulfed us. The air was filled with a damp, musty smell. "Ugh, what's that smell?" Joko asked, his voice trembling. I tried to lighten the mood by saying, "Maybe it's just rats or mold." But in my heart I was starting to feel uneasy. We entered the central room, which was filled with dusty furniture. On the walls there were old paintings that looked eerie. Suddenly, Rina screamed, "Look! There's a picture on the wall." She pointed to a painting that resembled a human shadow. Andi tried to joke, "Looks like a painting of a dead person, huh? Maybe their spirit is trapped here." We all laughed, but the laughter sounded forced. Fear began to creep into our hearts. As we went up to the second floor, the atmosphere grew even more chilling. Suddenly, a loud noise started to echo. It sounded like footsteps creaking on the worn-out ceramic floor. "Who's there?" Rina asked, her voice trembling. There was no answer, only the echo of our own voices. Joko tried to reassure us, "This is ridiculous. It's probably just the wind." But his eyes kept glancing toward the stairs. As we gripped the rusty stair railing, the noise grew closer. I began to panic. "Let's go back. This place feels weird," I whispered. But as we turned around, we saw a small shadowy figure dart across the end of the hallway. We all froze. "Who's that?" Rina shouted, her eyes wide. Andi pointed in the direction of the shadow. "Look over there." We ran toward the exit, but for some reason, the door wouldn't open. We were trapped. The sound of footsteps grew closer, and we panicked. "Push harder," Joko yelled. But before we could do anything, a cheerful laugh echoed behind us. "Boo!" The voice laughed maniacally, sending shivers down our spines. I felt something touch my shoulder, cold and terrifying. In a state of panic, I tried to think clearly. Why is no one helping us? Is this just a trick of our minds? Rina tried to stay calm and said, maybe we should head to the window. If the door is locked, we can escape through the window. We rushed to the window, but when Andi pulled back the curtains, we saw the same shadowy figure standing outside. Its expression looked more real, slowly approaching us with a terrifying smile. "We have to get out of here," Joko shouted again. We had no choice but to jump out the window. We landed on the hard ground, pain shooting through our bodies. But at that moment, the pain was better than staying in that haunted house. Outside, we ran into the darkness toward the nearby forest. "Where do we go now?" Rina shouted, out of breath. "We need to get to the village and ask for help," I replied, running as fast as I could. The sound of laughter still echoed in our ears, as if following us. When we finally reached Joko's house, we immediately told our story. Joko's mother simply said, "It's just your imagination." Maybe she was right, but the fear still lingered in our hearts. That night, we tried to sleep, but nightmares continued to haunt us. 5 years have passed since that night, and I have never returned to that old house. Every time I pass by the area, a chill runs down my spine. Recently, I heard that the house burned down for the second time. Villagers often talk about a small child's figure seen around the ruins. Was that the shadow we saw that night? Or maybe one of us wasn't supposed to return to the real world. We promised never to talk about that experience again, but the memories continued to haunt us. The darkness waiting behind the door, or the shadow that might be watching us from behind the walls. It all still feels real. It seems like we will forever be trapped in that dark story. A tale we will always remember every time the full moon shines in the night sky.